right. Our next guest up today is our very own Senator Wes Climer.
York County.
Representing, actually, mine and you. He's
That's
both
right.
of our
Yeah.
senator,
Yeah.
right? Not only senator, but a friend.
And
close
neighbor.
Friend.
Yeah.
Not everybody likes him, but
welcome to
hey,
Pints and Politics, man.
he's like
We've done this plenty of times on the porch before. It's nice to do it in this setting now.
That's right, man. So last day of session.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the Senate now?
This was the conclusion of my 8th session.
Wow.
And it has gone by rapidly.
8th session.
8th.
No.
This was
8th
our
year.
8th year.
Yeah, 8th session.
Oh, okay.
Well, a session's every 2 years,
years.
right?
Oh, well, 8th. Sorry.
Yeah.
Eighth
Okay, I'm
year.
gonna say you're not that old yet.
Fourth session. Fourth session.
You'd have more gray hair if you were in your 8th session.
This is our first sine die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you're on the other side. You're on the stiff side where you don't really get to fight too much on the floor. Y'all have
decorum
background.
and
I
all
would say
that
that
stuff.
on Sine Die Day, the Senate very much resembles the House.
Yeah.
In terms of the chaos and people running around, and
Yeah.
it's a lot louder on Sine Die. Normally, the Senate is. I mean, you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah, you got to have a jacket on, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I made the mistake one time of not wearing my jacket when the Senate was in recess. And we weren't even on camera. Nothing was going on. And it was a hot day. I took my jacket off, and the clerk himself ran over and physically threw my jacket back on me while we weren't even in session.
Wow.
So they take it. I didn't realize how serious they took it, but they
Yeah.
take it very serious.
Gotta
Yeah,
respect the institution.
That's right. That's right. And that sine die rough and tumble spilled over into the House late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
We had a bill that came back over that
DHEC restructuring.
Yeah, and Senator Peeler and Senator Davis, especially Senator Davis, was in our chamber.
Yeah.
And you could see the frustration. He was upset that we couldn't get that through. We had actually right across the aisle, I think Representative Rob Harris objected to bringing that up.
It was Josiah that objected to that one.
Yeah,
Josiah
and
Magnus.
It has been a project of the conservative movement for at least 2 decades to consolidate healthcare agencies and thereby lower the cost of delivering services and increase the efficacy of those services. I mean, this is a long-running, multi-decade, multi-governor project of the conservative movement to reduce the cost of healthcare agencies, and it is astonishing that it failed the way it did.
Well, the Freedom Caucus members have called this their health czar, the health czar bill.
Yeah, that is misinformation.
That's what I was going to say. Are you for health czars?
I mean,
that's the
yeah.
thing
No, I mean,
that puts against us.
it's the old saying that a lie can make it all the way around the world before the truth can get up, put its shoes on.
Yeah.
This is a categorically what happened in this case.
No way. Are you saying the Freedom Caucus lies? Are you? I mean, I'm just figuring that out.
I've seen so much misinformation about this subject that it really gives me grave concern around our ability to solve problems. I mean, if the public policy process is going to be influenced to this degree by outright lies,
I would call that hijacked.
we have a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been dealing with this. We have experienced this problem
Yes.
now for 2 years.
Which is why we give you crap whenever you endorse a Freedom Caucus candidate.
Hey, no, I'm not gonna paint with a broad brush. There are
And we try to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to engage in a Freedom Caucus versus
right.
conversation, because there are a lot of serious substantive policymakers there, and there are serious substantive policymakers who disagree with them. And it's totally appropriate for folks to go out and fight the fight and engage in the battle of ideas and agree to disagree. In this case, where I draw, I mean, just misinformation in this case.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and I agree with you not painting with a broad brush, but whenever that painting is claiming a group for the accomplishment as opposed to the individual that's standing up and doing the fight, and that becomes the issue that I have.
Yeah. And
Well-
anytime it's more about red versus blue or shirts versus skins rather than the facts and solving a problem and making life better for people, we've gone off the rails.
Yeah. And when you mean shirts versus skins, you mean shirts versus blouses.
Calling you out, Thomas Beach.
But, so, I mean, what's the answer here? We literally, as conservatives, we try to say, hey, let's fix government. Let's try to streamline the processes. Let's try to make it more efficient, right? We try to bring all of our business acumen and experience to our public service, and we try to accomplish these goals, and you just get this last-minute obstruction. I mean, as a Gamecock fan, I'm used to the phrase, there's always next year. But, it is an election year. I mean, and those elections have impacts. I know you don't see it as much in the Senate, but, I mean, how do you fix this? Because
Look,
social media,
I mean, we're about to go into a deeply philosophical vein,
Yeah.
so I'll try to be very brief. But I mean, in my mind, the fundamental purpose of government is to preserve a condition for the state of man, and that condition is ordered liberty. That's the purpose of government. And so, when there are impediments to that, when government is too expensive, when taxpayers are taxed too much, when essential services are inefficiently provided, you got to fix those things. That's how I view my job, is fixing those things that impair or infringe upon that condition of ordered liberty. And the condition of ordered liberty is impaired when government costs too much. And what we're talking about here, healthcare consolidation, is an example of trying to make government cost less and deliver higher quality services at a lower cost. That is fundamentally what I think the conservative project is about.
Yep. And
I think I'll just shut up and let Wes talk.
I picked the wrong guy. No, and I try to have these discussions with some of the members of the Freedom Caucus, and they just said this bill doesn't call that out. It doesn't talk about shrinking government. It doesn't talk about lowering costs. And I said, but we have to set that forth in statute first, and then let the, we're going to have to continue governing.
So the alternative is you have 117 different agencies with their own HR director, with their own financial offices, with their own senior leadership and deputy senior leadership.
Yep.
Or maybe you just eliminate all that duplication and waste, consolidate it, make it cheaper, and make the delivery of services more effective.
Yep. I think what they were asking was they wanted that guaranteed. And I'm like, we can't do that right now. We got to consolidate, see where the fat is, once we consolidate. And, it just wasn't convincing enough because...
and the misinformation in this case really revolved around the notion that this bill granted additional authority to the government.
Correct.
It doesn't. It changed nothing at all, 0.0 about government power.
Actually, we even, just to ensure, whenever in judiciary, we made it to where if anyone did want to enact anything, it had to go at the word of the governor. So that way no one had power over the governor.
Sure.
Right.
In
healthcare emergencies.
Think about the status quo. It's crazy. The status quo, we currently have a health czar.
Correct.
We currently have a health czar because the director of DHEC is appointed by the DHEC board. The DHEC board is appointed by the governor and confirmed by the General Assembly. And so the DHEC board, who is the ultimate authority over the DHEC director, is completely unaccountable to the people.
Correct.
So
instead, this bill would have made the director of DHEC immediately accountable to the people through the people's elected representative in the executive branch, which is the governor.
Are you saying Josiah Magnuson just created a health czar?
I think he participated in the preservation of a health czar.
Yeah, man. Well,
like I said, I'll just shut up now.
Yeah, and I tell you, and you know what this means now is that Department of Mental Health, not consolidated. Department of Special Needs, its own.
Yep.
And go ahead and look at the Legislative Audit Council's reports on the special needs, disability and special needs. It was scathing. I mean, it's terrible. It's an inefficient board. It's just everything that you don't want in state government. And the Freedom Caucus said, no, that's good. Status quo is okay. And that's
all
just,
right. We got a primary coming up June the 11th. So for
Yeah.
all of you that are listening, just keep that in mind whenever you go to the polls.
yeah, I just, it's frustrating. What about judicial reform?
Yes. Judicial
yeah.
reform.
All right, so I'll say a great feature of our form of government in a lot of cases is that it is very difficult to enact laws. It is very difficult to enact laws that bind the behavior of our citizens. And in a lot of cases, that's very good. However, when you're passionately supportive of something, all of those traps along the way in the public policy process that impede your project to improve things become very frustrating. And so, judicial reform has been a project for some period of time, and really a lot of progress is made this session. The Senate passed meaningful reform. The House passed meaningful reform.
Would you say more meaningful reform?
There were features of the House bill that I thought were superior to the Senate bill, and there were some features of the Senate bill that I thought were superior to the House bill.
Right.
And that's going to ultimately get worked out in a conference committee. So how a bill becomes law, it gets introduced, subcommittee, committee, Senate or House, and then it does the same process over on the other side, subcommittee, committee, full body.
We have one rule here. Before you start explaining anything, you got to say, for the two listeners out
For
there.
the two listeners. Yeah, for the two listeners. Well, there's like 10 people out in the audience. Maybe 20 now. I mean, this is how you get there. You all have, increased your listenership by like 1,000%.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, and then when the House and Senate don't agree, there's a conference committee, right? So conference committee, 3 members of the House, 3 members of the Senate. Today, a conference committee was appointed to consider the differences between the House and Senate versions of the judicial reform bill. And I am quite, I'm trying to think of the right adjective.
Suspicious.
Suspicious would be good. That's a good one. I am skeptical that this conference committee will reach resolution because of the members who were appointed to it. And it is really quite disappointing to have engaged in this much work through both the House and the Senate to see what I anticipate is a bill likely dying on the vine in a conference committee because of very poor personnel choices at the top of the Senate.
Well, and I want to point this out because whenever I decided to run for the House, started campaigning, I became one of the first candidates to run on judicial reform.
Yeah.
I only did that because of conversations with you. Yeah. Senator Climer sat down saying, let me tell you what's wrong with our judicial system, and going through that, and then it became a fight on my end as well, and trying.
No, you served on the committee.
Yes.
You've been a stalwart supporter of fixing some of these problems.
Yes, and I think that the solutions are there. I think they're there before us. Some people think that we should amend the Constitution. I don't think that's the way to go, but I think that what the House presented was really good. I don't know about the unlimited cap of candidates because that could be overwhelming.
Sure.
But at the same time, things such as the term limits for members on JMSC.
Yeah, love that.
I think that is good because that way you don't have anyone feel like they are beholden to a member that's
So,
gonna
and
be
so
on
this
the
would be an example of, I think, the House's version of the bill is better than the Senate's version of the bill. The House's version of the bill had permanent, enduring term limits, whereas the Senate version of the bill just guaranteed routine turnover of membership.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would also say the House bill addressed our situation with magistrates.
Yeah.
And I think that was important. Now, what would you say are the strong points on the Senate side?
That it could pass the Senate? Fair enough.
Number one.
Number one. But the two versions are really similar on the point of composition of the judicial merit selection.
Yes.
I mean, there are differences on the margins, right? I mean, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. Brandon, you talked about lifting the cap on the number of candidates that JMSC can report out. The Senate version is 6. The House version is unlimited. Again, 6 in one, half dozen in the other.
I think 6 is a whole lot better than unlimited.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the manner in which judicial elections are conducted, probably, but maybe there's a case, who knows, in the future when there are 10 superbly qualified candidates and that cap of 6 lends itself to some problems, in which case the unlimited version would be superior.
So as far as the Senate conferees go, what did you see during the debate on this bill on the Senate side? I mean, we have Rankin's going to be...
so the conferees are
Malloy.
Senator Rankin from Horry, Senator Malloy from Darlington, and Senator Massey from Edgefield. And one thing I would note about those conferees is that 0 of them co-sponsored the judicial reform bill. A bill that was co-sponsored by more than half of the Senate.
Yeah. Man. So I guess
tough.
Senator Climer and Senator Davis are, going to be frustrated in the offseason.
Well, who knows? I mean, hopefully, look, the differences between the House and the Senate bill are in the grand scheme of things, they're quite narrow. A compromise between the two seems easily within reach. But if conferees decide they'd rather not do anything at all, then the position of those three senators will prevail.
Yeah. And so for the two listeners out there, how does the conference work? Is it simple majority, 4 out of 6?
Have to have so it's 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate. It has to have a majority
of
each. So at least 2 senators and at least 2 representatives.
So we're
going to
need Malloy or Rankin to.
Yeah, and let me say this: with all 3 of the Senate conferees, all 3 of them participated in the working group that President Alexander put together on judicial reform, and all 3 of them engaged productively and in good faith on reaching a compromise that could pass the Senate. And I shouldn't presume that their intent in a conference committee would be any different than it was in the over the course of the Senate's negotiations. That's probably unfair of me to say, but I will say there were certainly more enthusiastic senators who like 26 of them.
Well, for the eternal optimist in me, I am going to cross my fingers and pray at night that we can get something substantial done on this. I think literally, again, we've noted for the 2 listeners that we're all friends. Wes, you and I are neighbors, and these are 2 issues: judicial merit, or the judicial reform, and the CON.
Yeah.
Those were 2 things that around the fire you would tell me about when I was not a member of the legislature. And I was like, you're kidding. That seems so antithetical to common sense government,
Well,
So
I'll say this to give you a shout out, Wes. You're the only reason I'm involved in politics. Whenever Wes moved back to York
you need
County-
better friends now.
Hey, no. I've got better friends now.
they're not
18-year-old said, "Man, this is messed up. Callie gets to grow up with your friends being like Senator Climer and Representative Sessions. I had to grow up with Justin and Casey. What is this
Justin
about?"
and Casey are great. I love those guys.
yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Fun serving with you.
Enjoy.
This
Always
session.
enjoy listening to Pipes and
And,
Politics, and I get to fast forward through this section because I was here for it. All right, fellas. Thank you.
All right.
Make this life
Good
so
deal.
easy. Raise 'em up to the small town believers. Hats off to the fighters and the leaders. Here's to you, here's to me, here's to us being